Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this session in R&I Days dedicated to railways of the future. It's a very timely session. Of course, R&I Days, as I'm sure many of you experiencing, are provided by us, by the Commission, as an opportunity for all stakeholders to meet and work with us on establishing what the strategic priorities for our research and innovation programme should be. And of course, at this juncture, that's absolutely key because we are well underway in establishing the Future Horizon Europe programme. But of course, this is transport, this is railways, so we're not just doing or dealing with pure research, but we also very clearly need to ensure that the research programme that we provide is relevant to and delivers on our overall policies. And of course, we face huge challenges in society and in technology today. The new Commission, under our Commissioner, President-elect van der Leyen, will take office very shortly, we hope on the 1st of November. And you will already have seen that one of her key priorities, perhaps indeed the key priority for the beginning of her commission, is to deliver a carbon neutral continent. And as you'll be very well aware, we're a long way from being carbon neutral today. The transport sector in particular is crucial to achieving that goal because we, for reasons that I think everybody knows, find decarbonisation much more difficult than many other sectors. Now, rail, of course, does not find decarbonisation difficult. Most of the rail network, 80% or more, is run by electricity, so the challenge there is getting the electricity decarbonised, which colleagues elsewhere in the building are talking about. But the challenge for rail is making sure that actually we deliver a product which is sufficiently attractive that rail plays a big and hopefully growing role in the transport mix of the future. So actually that low carbonness of energy can be taken advantage of. Now, key to this afternoon's session, as part of the preparation of Horizon Europe, we are working on proposals for the future structure of research. Of course, in rail and many of the other transport modes, we're looking at the continuation or the future of joint undertakings or collaborative research with the sector. And so clearly what we're discussing today must be a very strong input into how that future rail partnership will work. You've still got plenty of time to comment. We launched the public consultation a couple of weeks ago, and that will run through until the 6th of November. And in addition to that, within the confines of the overall programme, there will be a separate further consultation launched a bit later, looking at particular issues surrounding what should be the future of, that's more of the future content of rail research. But we've only got an hour. I tend to talk for too long, so let me rapidly introduce the participants in today's panel discussion. Looking at those of you in the audience, I think many of them are pretty familiar to you, but we have Carlo Borghini, who is, of course, the Executive Director of Shift2Rail, so absolutely at the centre of delivering European railway research with us. I'm very pleased we have Corinne Talot, the Innovation and Research Manager at SNCF. We have Gilles Peterhan, Secretary General of the UIP, the International Union for Wagon Keepers, representing the interests of clearly the users of the railway, but in particular the freight users of the railway. And here I should stress that one of the things that we're not doing well enough, we think, on in the railways, and we really want to improve with the next round of railway research, is freight. So please tell us what we need to do to keep your wagons running. And then finally, sitting next to me, representing the other end users of the railways, is Chris Irwin, who's a member of the Managing Board of the European Passenger Federation. He's also a former chair of the European Railway Agency and of the Channel Tunnel Safety Authority. So he's got lots of experience in different branches of railways, but today he needs to tell us what it is we need to do in future rail research to keep the passengers coming and to therefore make sure that rail decarbonises or helps decarbonisation. So, over to the panellists. Now, this is going to be, we hope, an interactive panel. I've got some questions, some general questions for everybody, some specific questions, but clearly we also would like to leave some time for input from the audience. Now, the first question is designed to be provocative. Of course, I've said why we still need rail, but the question actually says the opposite. The question says, well, everybody's mobility is changing. People are jumping on electric scooters. You see Ubers everywhere. We're delivering parcels by drones in the near future. So we're moving to a system of transport which is all about individual vehicles, all about IT. So why is it actually that rail is still relevant in this mix of the future? And what is it that we have to do to really adapt rail to this system of integrated transport using all sorts of different new technologies? I don't know, who would like to start?
It works? Yeah? You can hear me? Yeah? Okay, thank you. Happy to be there this afternoon. So the question is wide, but I would like to start with the mainspring of SNCF. Our slogan is free to move and zero emission. And I think it's very important to remind that railway, one of advantage of railway is the low impact of environment. And we can remind, for example, in France, we have 11% of passenger kilometer, railways 11% of passenger kilometer, but only 0.6% of CO2 emission. So it's very important to remind that, but I will explain, we would like to go further, but it's important to have in mind that the low impact of environment is one benefit of railway. It's not the only one. This is also the capacity. We transport every day 3.7 million of passengers in France. So the capacity is very important, also the speed, and a low land occupancy is also a benefit. So this is the main benefit of railway, but we have to reinvent the railway, to boost the railway, and to transform the railway to be more agile, to be more adapted to the issue of passenger. That means that we have to adapt railway for mass transit or to freight, to high-speed line. It is not the same railway, and we have really to adapt and be more agile on railway. The second challenge is to further on zero emission and to reach zero emission. For example, in France, we still have 50% of our regional train which are diesel. So we have an important research program to develop different solutions of decarbonization, hybrid, hydrogen, batteries. And the third one is to invent new mobilities, particularly where railway is not so relevant. For example, in regional area or in remote area, it's important to develop new mobility system, inclusive mobility system, which are connected with railway. But we have really to reinvent railway, but also invent new mobilities at the same time.
Great. And what are you looking for from the research program to help deliver that?
From the research program, it's very important to share our conviction in Europe and to be focused on the game changer of the railway. So that's the reason we are part of Shift to Rail program. We share the main game changer and work together. And what we expect from the Commission is also to support the demonstration of innovation. We don't accelerate the way of innovation from innovation to industrialization. So it's very important to have the support. And maybe I can further develop later on.
So, Gilles, everything's actually coming by truck convoys and by drone and so on. So where does rail fit in the future, and how do we do the research to keep you there?
Thank you, Kier. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a good question. I'm using electro-scooter, I'm using Uber and all the other stuff. And in fact, rail is safe, rail is sustainable. Corinne said it, rail respect user pays and polluter pays principle better than other modes, but still, it's not the most used mode of transport, let's say, at least for freight or for cargo. The fact is, we cannot deliver to every house. We cannot build a railway line which goes to everyone's house. Never happen. We cannot deliver parcel to everyone. And we have been concentrating on big goods, on carbon, or let's say fossil products, and we need to change that. We need at least to address the new expectation from the shippers and the freight forwarders. And this is the same as our expectation, not to be only on time. We always say we need on-time arrival. No. They want information all the time, day and night. They want to know exactly where, what is, and when. And that's the role of the railway, to get there and then to act as a backbone. Because that's also what the Commission does with the 10T, with CEF, and so on. Act as a backbone and be efficient, be reliable, and perhaps also less costly for the shippers. And then I think everything is going to be perfect for rail, to be the backbone of mobility of goods. That's where I see the role of railways in freight.
Chris, for the passengers, it's just easier to take an Uber and just go with Uber from A to B, isn't it? I mean, why still bother?
Well, is it? Aren't we sort of deceiving ourselves a bit? I'm of the school that sort of thinks particulates are the thing we should be worrying about in a big, big way. I accept decarbonisation is important, but I also think that we shouldn't be blind to the continuing impacts, the public health impacts, the land use impacts, the social impacts of road transport, particularly because of the particular impact of tyres, of road surfaces, of brakes, etc., etc. So I think rail has something going for it there. I've been messing around with railways as a passenger advocate. Sorry, I'm going too fast. I have been messing around with railways for the last 30 years, and I think I've probably got a fairly good understanding of how railways work. One of the things I've learnt in that 30 years is that railways don't have a very good understanding of how passengers work, what passenger priorities are. In fact, I can think of few industries that are quite as bad as railways are at understanding what the needs states of their clients are. So when I think about the future, I think about the data I've collected and been involved with others in collecting over the years, where we know the things that matter to people are value, are reliability, are getting a seat at times when you want to travel, are accessibility. And I say to myself, any research needs really to start by saying, how does it address those four main things? Value, reliability, getting a seat at times you want to travel, and accessibility. That's my sort of litmus test for the whole research game. So, having said that, of course I share the vision. I like railways. I would like to see rails the backbone of a synchro-mobility system, a synchro-modality system. Everything nicely integrated so that one uses whatever is most efficient to do what everyone wants to do at the right time and wants to do it. And I think rail has a great part to play there. And I've been looking privately lately at issues around data access, open data, the obligations that railway operators and others should have to make their data available, and thinking a bit about universal interfaces to enable people to build systems to get in there. So that seems to me another very important area, behavioural and then data access. But my third one, I'm not normally nice about the Commission because, like you, I'm sort of British deep down and I tend to be cynical and I tend to take pride in humiliation and so on and admire very much Boris Johnson.
Now.
No. But having said that, I really was impressed, and I wrote it down, I was really impressed by a passage in the President-elect's mission letter to the candidate Transport Commissioner, where she got it right. She said, you should ensure that transport remains affordable, tick, reliable, 2 ticks, and accessible, notably for those on low income or living in remote areas, and that passengers' rights are expected. So, a horizontal layer of things. I gave you my 4 just now, put in VDL's ones, and I think you got the basis of a research recipe.
Excellent, thanks for that. And I think we do look forward with working with the mandate of from the new president, because it really does deliver what we want to achieve in transport. And I think, again, it's very important that we don't take the view of some that we should just restrict transport, because clearly transport is the glue that brings us together as Europeans, both as citizens and allows us to have a single market that actually works. So, I mean, we've got to decarbonise, we've got to get rid of the pollution, but we do have to keep a very strong transport system for all sorts of reasons. So, Carlo, what else should we be doing to achieve it?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Kier. Well, first, it's very good to speak here with the two most important shareholders, the passenger, and let me say, in this case, the freight business, because we should be working in research and innovation from this point of view.
But you know we are competitors, huh?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
But this was the passenger said just before.
Okay,
we need
no,
to have a very good synchro mobility or synchro modality, and we need to be sure that we put together. And we believe that research and innovation can help in doing this. So, which is the situation of railway? 15 years ago, we were not like this, but today we have more people on board, and we should not forget the railway every day transport billions of people around the world. If you put together urban railway, main lines, high speed, is billions of people. So don't forget it, because we focus on new mobility, but still we are serving billions of people and few millions of tons of goods. We have infrastructure that under strong pressure. We have a continuous, I would say, reading of the situation by the public through social media. We have a scrutiny going on, and I think the change that is going on in the sector is taking over much more accountability of the situation. And I think this is what we see in Shift to Rail through our members and also the other stakeholders, is to work in the research innovation, following the line that Chris, you were mentioning before, on the value, on the behavior, and trying to find the solutions that are not driven by technology, but where technology is providing the answer to the needs of the passenger and the freight business. So we are on the way. We, as a Shift to Rail, I'm not saying we are the recipe to all the requests coming from the passenger. I think we are far, far away. There is what I think is the key and the important aspect that we are trying to bring inside Shift to Rail, and I believe that this will affect also and should be there in the next rail research innovation program, with whatever form it will take, is that the sector has to work together. And this is the fundamental component that is the winning card. Otherwise, we'll be competing and we'll be paying the cost in a wrong manner. And I think, on the contrary, as also Chris said before, I'm not sure that we need to be only the backbone. I think if we take the role of rail, we should be able to design the next mobility and transport together with the other modes of transport, including the electric scooter, including the autonomous vehicle, including all the rest. We have a lot of opportunity in front of us. We have a lot of shortcomings that we need to address, and we have the opportunity to deliver it. So the rail research innovation that we are bringing forward is a step in the direction of answering these needs. After this comes with technology. So we are looking at automation level 4. We are looking at satellite positioning. We are looking at new concept for infrastructure, sustainable infrastructure. We should look at climate resilient systems, because we are talking about climate change, but are our system resilient to the climate change and not only environmental friendly? So I think all these elements will contribute to change the way people are moving and mobility. I think the Rail Research Innovation Program that we are driving together with the different stakeholders in the sector, with the manufacturer, with the operator, with the infrastructure manager, with the wagon keeper to a certain extent, the passenger, as I said, the main shareholders. The idea is to deliver a major transformation that will bring together region and people in the continent. If you look at Europe as a geographical continent, there is no reason why trains cannot travel through regions, bringing together people, and be sure that we service this type of logic.
Thanks, Carlo. A question then I think for Corinne and Carlo in particular. I mean, we hope, of course, we wait to see what will finally happen, but we hope we will have quite a lot of money for research in the next programme for rail. But clearly, it won't be enough to cover all the needs of the sector. So, what is it? Where is the most added value for doing research at a European level, and how do we, for Corinne in particular, how do we reconcile that with the work you're doing at a national level? How do we make sure they're complementary rather than competing? And also, how do we actually make sure that the results of that work get used and deployed across the system?
As I said before, we work a lot in partnership with all the stakeholders of railway operation in Europe through Shift to Rail, but also in a direct discussion. What is really important is really to define what are the game changer of the railway system for the future. We cannot make research in all the subjects. We have to be focused on certain subjects. And when we discuss with Shift to Rail and with the other stakeholder, we define that we should digitalize the infrastructure. We should make operation more automatic with autonomous train, with a traffic management system. We should accelerate the way to zero emission, as I said, and we should develop also in parallel new mobility. So this is really the four main focus that we want to share in Europe to prepare the future specification. It's important to start from the beginning of innovation to prepare the future standard. It's maybe in 5-10 years, but we should work together to define the future standards that help to have an efficient railway around Europe. And another point which is really important for me is to make cross-industry research. It's what we started to do through different European projects. For example, for the fail-safe localization of train, we built a project which is supported by the European Commission and the GSA to develop solutions that help the railway to be efficient, to digitalize the infrastructure through partnership with aeronautics, space and defense areas. So it's really important to encourage cross-industry research because we have to learn and open our mind if we want to make railway more efficient.
If I can complement what Corinne said, I think all this is absolutely fundamental because we have today issue that we need to solve. We have today's aspects that we need to address in order to make the system more cost efficient, more reliable. I go back to the words you used, more climate resilient. But so this is what we are already doing partly in Shift to Rail, and I think we need to do more, is that we need to optimize what we have today, and we need to re-engineer what we have today, including, as Corinne was saying, with satellite positioning, but also 5G, also the artificial intelligence systems, and clearly will not be railway to develop all this. Railway has to take the benefit of other joint undertaking, other programs, other European Union programs, national programs outside Europe, and understand if anything coming from outside can help to take stock of it and make improvements in the system. But I think also we need to do something more because, as I said, my impression, not everywhere in Europe, but in many areas we reach the limits. And you cannot extend the border because we have physical limits.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Bridging, Widening, Sharing, Let's Advance Europe Together session is about to begin in the Archimedes room. Please join us for that session in the Archimedes room. Bridging, Widening, Sharing, Let's Advance Europe Together.
Please stay here.
We don't share. Sorry about it. But so all this is fine, but we have reached in many areas the limits of the system. I say many times a high-speed train of last generation can stop from 300 to 0 in something like 1 minute. It's around 9 kilometers. 1 minute in an hour, you can arrive to 60 trains per minute. I think in the most advanced line, we have 18 trains per hour high speed. We can reach this level. Why not 60? Maybe we need to have a different concept of train. Maybe we need to think about it in a different manner. I think the key and where we need to invest in the research and innovation program in the next future is to agree a operational vision on how rail should be operated in the long term. And invest our research innovation solving today's problem, optimizing, solving tomorrow problem. I'm talking horizon 5 to 10 years because railway is not so fast sometimes. But all this having a clear vision on how we intend to operate the system in the future, how we want to see the rail system running. Imagine that we have the possibility to say we don't have rail system. But someone comes up with an idea saying, I put a track, well, I have the idea to put a track, and I have a vehicle that is self-powered. How I operate it? Do I need to put boxes on the ground? Do I need to put the traffic light with colors? Do I need to put level crossing and we know danger? Or maybe we can put everything on board, or maybe we need to understand where to put the technology. I think we need to start to ask this question because the railway system has a huge opportunity. It cannot go everywhere. We totally agree with it. I don't think there is money, so much money to invest in new lines. We can use what we have today. And the other aspect is that if we are doing this type of exercise, and we are able to lower the overall life cycle cost of the system, including, so I heard about the trashable trains, or the trains with a different life cycle, maybe not 100 years, maybe we need to rediscuss about it, but obviously you cannot pay the same price, you cannot have different return on investment. But if we are going in this direction, we will be much more inclusive. And this is, I think, is a fundamental aspect. We should not create a rail system that is not inclusive. We need to have, we have a rail system in rural area, in connecting different type of places of Europe that are abandoned because not sustainable. We need to rethink how to make them sustainable. And you don't make the investment on new technologies on a Fiat 500. You make on a Ferrari the investment, or in a Formula One investment. And after you transfer the technology in the other system. We should do the same. We should look where we have the highest margin, develop the technology that is the most advanced, and bring it to the other. So I think if you want to invest in research innovation in the next program, we need to have a full life cycle cost of research, looking of the most advanced through the fundamental research, where we are going in the long term. We need to have a clear program on bringing results for the passenger of today and the passenger in the medium term, and be sure that the operators, that those that are making business are able to make use of what is coming out from today results and bring benefit for the passenger and for the freight business.
Thanks. Chris, you wanted to...
Yes, I hate to disagree with Carlo, who I think is one of the great gods of European railway matters. But I want to make 2 points, if I may. I'm not sure it is Ferrari plus. I actually think it's much, much more local. It's scooter plus. When I travel from Swindon, which is where I live, or near where I live, to Brussels, I have a fantastic journey on a marvellous Japanese train before I get on a beautiful, then I got an underground train on a line designed 150 years ago before I catch an excellent German train on marvellously designed French tracks and come to Brussels. Or, I go to Geneva and cross Paris. I have fantastic German trains, I have fantastic French TGV trains, but I have the RER. And I think, one really needs to think hard about where our priorities lie. Most passengers, and therefore the attitudes of most consumers, and the attitude of the political public, therefore, is dominated by short, urban, and regional journeys. Big volumes of passengers, small volumes of kilometres. And one of the things I really regret, and I suspect some of the Brexity people in the UK have picked up on this, is that the European vision tends to be with the grand projet, with the great schemes, the TGVs or whatever, losing sight perhaps of those things that affect most people most of the time. So my plea would be that out of this we say, how much does this relate to ordinary people, to ordinary people's patterns of use and so on? And just very quickly, a second one, I'm personally no longer convinced that it is good to say we'll have the most competitive railway system in the world, because I don't believe competitiveness in itself equals value. I think if you talk to most passengers, what most passengers want is collaboration. Collaboration between railway companies, collaboration between the industry, collaboration between sectors, cross-modal collaboration. And there I think that the documents that have come out in connection with Horizon Europe miss an opportunity to gauge a change in public attitudes, partly brought about by the experience of a more, quotes, competitive railway system that we've had with market opening.
If I may react 1 second before... I totally agree with you.
I thought you would.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
yeah.
because
I think you're a wonderful man.
I was not speaking about investing in high speed.
No.
I was speaking investing and the research innovation to test it where we can have it because you have the maximum return on investment. And to translate as soon as possible the benefit coming from there in all the other modes of transport. But for sure, it will be extremely difficult, unless we are completely funding by public money, to make such investment in the commuter lines, or where you are already closing the lines, because it will be extremely difficult. But if you are able to make the investment in research innovation and demonstrate that it's working for the high speed, or maybe for the whatever is the most highest return investment coming from the railway business, you can translate this after in other modes of transport and like this. Yes, about the competitiveness. Yes, we don't need to have the most competitive rail system in the world. But I am also thinking that for Europe, competitiveness is also the global positioning in the economy in the world. And it's true that maybe it doesn't touch all of us directly because it's so far, far away, but it's corresponding to jobs, corresponding to regions, growth, economy, corresponding to local system, network. It touches small, medium enterprises, big companies. So the competitiveness as such is not for the system, but is really one of the key components that we should not forget, because otherwise we lose this competitive advantage. And we lose all the collaterals coming from it.
Yeah, I think it depends what you mean by competitiveness. Clearly, we need a highly competitive rail supply industry for the railways. I mean, what we want is competitiveness in the sense of being attractive, because clearly we do want people to use railways because they're a good system, not simply because we give them no alternative. Within that, we can use competition where it's helpful to drive service, but I think we also know very much that we need to provide an integrated system, and a lot of the focus, both of policy, but for today's purpose, research, is about how we make that collaborative system work better as well. But Gilles, I think it's time you came in. Of course, we've been...
freight don't vote, we know that.
But I mean, I think, of course, Chris is saying, well, we've got to look after what people vote about. And the whole problem we always have with freight is that people don't vote about it. They can be NIMBYs and say, we don't want it here, but they don't actually vote to make it better. So what is it that we need to do to make rail freight better, to keep it as a key part of the freight system? But importantly, what is it that we have to do in research to help deliver that? Because again, this I think is one of the key areas where Europe should have added value, precisely because it's where the market isn't delivering. So what are your priorities for us?
I'll try to be short, otherwise we are going to discuss that for hours. Just to come back on what Corinne said about priorities. I think in freight in the last 5 years, perhaps also thanks to shift to rail, I don't know, we have been better in agreeing on priorities, which is a good thing, because now we can use the money more efficiently than before. When we are in competition and you see there is a big gap between the interest of passenger on commuters, local, a lot of people, and long-distance autonomous freight train of 740 meters. Armand Toubol is here in the room, 20 years saying the same about this vision. We are not speaking about being competitive. What we have as a message is make rail easy. And if you make rail easy, I'm sure you can address attractiveness. Because if it's easy, then it's perhaps also a little bit sexy. And that's our biggest issue today. And to achieve that, it's good to do fundamental research. And I agree with Carlo, we need a transformation. But for this transformation to happen in freight, you need pilots and you need deployment. And that's one of the biggest issues I think we should address. Because you can have nice projects, you can do the Ferrari, but if the Ferrari is never transformed into mass production of wagons, of trains, of lines, of procedures whatsoever, it's for nothing. It's really for nothing. And I think now that we have the big ideas, and if you look at all the paper, ERAC vision, also what is from the Commission, coming from the Commission, we're all going to the same direction. So I think now it's also time to think about, okay, how do we make sure that what we are doing, the good ideas we have, are implemented? And that's for us, and please take that on board. That's important. It's really important for all the actors in rail freight to come to market deployment. We have long investment times. So if you wait for a renewal, the Ferrari is outdated and you need to build a new one before, and it's never implemented. And we have a couple of examples we could use today to demonstrate that.
Okay. From a railway point of view, I mean, how do you make this deployment happen?
In fact, we try to accelerate the deployment of innovation. Is one of our topic of every day. We start an important program which is called Tech for Rail inside SNCF, and really to change our mind and to change the way we conduct the innovation, to accelerate the innovation. We don't want anymore to make proof of concept. We want to conduct innovation up to industrialization. That means to have different project management, another project management, so with more agile methods, with open method, with partners, a lot of partners from outside the railway coming and working in our project. And we want to test as soon as possible on the real life. So that's the reason we would like to develop more and more demonstrators on a real network to check from the beginning what are the technological issues that we have to solve, what are the investments that we need to industrialize the innovation, and also what are the skills that we have to develop inside railway to be able to operate after that the railway. So it's really important to accelerate the way from innovation to industrialization, and it's what we are doing inside SNCF, but also in the European projects.
And Carlo, of course, one of the innovations with Shift to Rail was supposed to be the development of these platforms, as we call them. I think it's still quite early days on that, even though we're now 4 years into the programme. So, I mean, how are we going to pick up on that to deliver what SNCF certainly want, amongst many others, and really have these demonstrators working quickly in future?
Well, I think that, as you said, we are still in early days, but I believe that already with 2020 we'll start to have some specific demonstrators. But there are still demonstrators coming from a specific technology or subsystem. And I think the real advantage will come if we bring all the demonstrators, we start to bring a new concept of train. And I think what Corinne, you said about the industrialization process, I think, is a fundamental component. We need to integrate inside the research innovation the full cycle up to the industrialization. The deployment is part of the choices of the operator, infrastructure manager, but because it's the way through which we can attract the customer or intermediate customer that will make the decision on the investment. As Gilles was saying, if we don't provide the clear business case for a customer to invest in a new solution, they will never invest and everything will be postponed. So I think this is really a key component. The second is also build a participation or a membership in the program in a manner that we tailor-made the participation to answer the different needs. And the needs of an operator are completely different from a wagon keeper or from a manufacturing industry or infrastructure manager. So I think we should build a program that would allow to understand which are the specific needs and tailor-made the participation, membership, whatever we want to call it, and how we want to manage it in a manner that we are able to answer the different needs, because this will result in a commitment to deploy. Because I don't think anyone will go to invest its own money if at a certain point in time it has not a return on investment, whatever it will be, societal, economical, industrial, and so on and so on. So if you are able to answer these needs, I believe that the participation in the program will be really a leverage to accelerate the deployment of innovation. And this is a last point. I think what we need to have on board and we should be clear is not only innovating the technology, but also the way we develop a regulatory framework and standards. I think these are really two key components into which we need to invest, because clearly we want a safety system. So that is a condition sine qua non in this equation. So we need to be sure that the system is safe. So we need to look at which are the where it requires times to make the changes, regulatory framework and standards are key components in this process, so we need to invest also in this. So we need to be sure that the national authorities, now with the most important role of the European Agency for Railways, the fourth railway package, we have a major advantage from this point of view, but they need to be on board since the beginning to understand what is coming out from research innovation. If you are able to bring up a program with this collective commitment to deliver the change will come. It will be a clear return on investment for all the sector.
Well, of course, on that last point, I fully agree with you. We're trying to align that within the Commission between Shift to Rail and the agency. But I think we do have an issue, particularly with national authorities, that the safety authorities are very conservative. Of course, their job is to prevent accidents, and we all want to prevent accidents. But the easiest way of preventing accidents sometimes seems to be just to say we won't change. So that's something we all need to address if we're going to get any of this innovation delivering what we want. Chris, though, back to the passengers. And I think in your opening statement you said we need to do a lot more to understand what passengers really want and what will motivate them to use the system in the way we hope they will use it. So concretely, what more should we be doing as we look to the future research programme? How do we actually get this real understanding of passenger needs into our research programme?
My view is we need to be ready to invest in it, invest in understanding what consumers' mindsets are saying to them, what their need states are in marketing language. Just listening, I'm very impressed when I listen, but then I think to myself, but hold on, I've been involved in Iraq for 15 years, and I've actually seen projects come round not once, not twice, but in some cases 3 times. And I notice they always fall down the valley of death between, perhaps they don't even get to prototype stage, but certainly implementation seems exceptionally difficult. And I look back on another part of my life where I was in broadcasting and sort of think back, what things did I learn when I was in the broadcasting world about broadcast technology? And one of the things I learned, abiding knowledge, is that very seldom does a piece of broadcasting innovation turn out to be developed or used in the way the people who came up with it in the first place thought of. So, for example, radio, a way of communicating in the First World War, in the trenches and so on. Actually, it was American commercialism and European high-mindedness that gave it the form of being something much more fundamentally cultural and widespread. It was broadcasting. Television, originally thought of by a serious official inquiry in the UK as something to send programmes to cinemas where people would gather on 8 o'clock of an evening to watch a film, and they'd get it in up-to-date time. Hadn't really occurred to people you could broadcast it and get through. Satellite broadcasting, I was involved in that, and I think early on the motivation really was to keep other people out, rather than thinking about streaming and all the things that have happened since. So almost inevitably in the broadcast world, people got the technology's application wrong at the outset. They didn't conceive of it, because they didn't really understand what the need states of their potential consumers were. And my argument about the past Horizon programs and the FPs and so on is too often things failed because of failure to grasp what the need states of the end users really were. Would these actually get taken up and used? So, answering your question directly, I would say really important that a future research programme has a healthy dose of behavioural research, that we shouldn't be frightened of trying to understand what the end market might actually want. And we should be very, very wary when strategic planners in any organisation, with the exception of SNCF, say is the thing for the future. So I'm afraid, dig your roots, find out what people want, and get that right.
From the customer perspective, SNCF, Gilles, to UIP, do you think you understand enough of what your real customers, the passengers or the freight consigners want out of the system, or can we do some more work with you to address these issues?
I think it's really important when we think to railway for the future to think customer first. So it's what we are doing. Even for our engineers, it's not always easy for them, but we want to to imagine what will be the service for customer with this technology, with this innovation. So it's really important to start from this. And also to imagine how the innovation will be operated by a person from SNCF in contact with the passenger. So it's important to understand the needs of the passenger. You mentioned before that mass transit is our priority. It's, for example, important to understand and to improve the passenger flow in our station. It's, you can operate the train, but if you don't think at the passenger flow at the station, so it doesn't work. So you have to think the railway system as a whole, and for passenger, dedicated for passenger and end users.
It's quite a difficult question because we are also part of this rail freight industry as freight wagon keeper. And I think to understand what you're mentioning, Chris, you need to understand the needs, you need to understand the behavior and why. You need first to be good at listening. I'm not sure we're so good at listening. We know, basically, we have the knowledge and we have done railways for 100 years, so we know exactly what we are doing. I agree also on the fact that Uber was not invented by a taxi company. I have not seen many new players in this industry for quite a couple. I'm not so long as you in the rail industry, but I'm not seeing many, let's say, companies coming with new ideas, thinking out of the box and bringing the ideas. So that's a difficulty. That's something we need, or a gap we need to bridge, but I don't know how. Because also the freight customers, to be honest, and perhaps you have other experience from shift to rail, but it's difficult to involve them. You know, it's business to business. In business to customers or to passengers, perhaps you can, because they are free and they are happy to share. In business to business, quite difficult. They tell you without telling you, and if you are not a good listener, you don't understand. So it might be that we address the wrong priorities. But if we don't do it, then we can forget about rail freight. So we need this transformation in any case. And I'm more of an evolutionary than a revolutionary approach, in rail freight especially. So we need to take the steps. And that's why I was mentioning the need to have pilot and the need to have market deployment to move a little bit first. And then perhaps with the time, we will be able to listen better to the customers, to the shippers who are coming, who will tell us exactly what they expect and the role they see for railways. Basically, it's always the same: reliability, cost, information. So we keep on discussing the same ideas. And it's time now that we move on to delivery and not to fundamental research. And no, just move on. I'd like to see, before I die, an autonomous freight train 740 meters running from Hamburg to Istanbul. Make rail easy. I mean, I'm sure, make rail easy. If we do that, I'm sure every shippers will be happy, because it's too complicated today. This message we got.
Don't expect before 100 years, so you have a long life.
I was going to say the opposite. I mean, we have a new commission. We have a new commissioner designate at the moment. Maybe you need to go and talk to her and the president and say, end of this commission, make that a reality. Because all the technology really is there, or almost there to do it. So make us deliver it.
But Keir, can I just try? Isn't it mindset? I mean, we've been talking about shipping by rail or a passenger travelling by rail. Actually, I make journeys. You know, I make journeys of which rail will be an ingredient. It's very, very seldom the sole ingredient, because I've got to get to the station in the first place. So if one thinks journeys, or if one thinks what's the expression? Consignments?
Moving goods.
Moving goods, yeah, moving goods. And actually trying to understand what someone making a journey wants, or someone who wants to move goods wants, then you're beginning to think cross-modally. So my second thing, don't just think in terms of more behavioural research, think in terms of cross-modal research. Think in terms of end-use needs.
That's sure.
Because that way actually gets you somewhere that may benefit rail on a scale that was previously not known.
Agree.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to announce that the Horizon Prize for Social Innovation will be awarded in Room Archimedes at 6:30 p.m. We warmly invite you to attend the ceremony.
They don't want you to speak.
No, exactly. I want to cut it. I may or yeah. About the expectation and understanding the needs of the client or whatever they type. We need to. It's quite a difficult question because if you start to look at this, we risk to have complete different direction, and we are looking at short term without looking at what in reality we need to address. I believe that we need to look at how we can create a system that, as you said, can be offering a full journey as a part of the full system. And after the question is that do we create the need or do we ask which is the need? And I think when I went to the US to see one other project, I don't mention it, and we were discussing about the attractiveness of the system. They told me, yes, we can collaborate with attractiveness because we want to create the need to use us as a system. They were not thinking about which are the needs. They were thinking, I will create for you the need. And I think all of us have a smartphone. How many of you had the need 10 years ago to have Facebook? Or Google and so on and so on? Okay? Well, we are Akon here, so maybe you can say something about it, okay? What I'm saying is that I think it's an absolutely fundamental aspect to understand which are the needs. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. But I think also we need to look at today how the rail system can be a part of this journey together and address what is today the limitation that we have to offer a different type of journey. And I think there are limitations we can address through research innovation, we can address through technology, and as we said before, through decision-making point on the investment. I think this is really what we need to maybe work together.
Keir, can I just try one thing?
I just wanted to try and involve the audience because we've got about 10 minutes left. So,
Can I just draw your attention to the IREC research document where Porondo, the chair, said very cleverly and quite rightly, for finding solutions addressing the key factors, the attractiveness, convenience and affordability of the railway offer and its environmental sustainability is critical to providing customers, passengers and freight businesses with easy access to a portfolio of sustainable multimodality options. And that's what it's about.
Yeah. Okay, well, you've heard we need to do a lot more to really understand the needs of the end user. We need to get everything delivered. But what are your questions to our panel and also your priorities for rail research? Yeah.
Thank you very much. If you consider shifting to rail, I think we have discussed more shifting from road to rail. But we also have a big problem in the energy transition, which is aviation. And the question is, how can we organize a shift to rail from aviation? For relatively short distance, it's already done with TGV and daily TGVs. It's partly done, of course, but on Paris to Lyon or Paris to London, it's partly done. But in Europe, people travel also longer distances, and even with high-speed train, it doesn't work if it takes a whole day to go from Hamburg to Istanbul or Warsaw to Brest. I don't know. So it's while the high-speed train have killed the night trains in most countries, and recently Germany and France, although Austria is taking over to some extent. I think there might be a role in the future for high-speed night trains that would allow, in the time of a night, between 6 to 12 hours to travel 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 kilometers. And we should consider this. Of course, the air transport is way too cheap now for this to work, but people are working on it, and after some times, hopefully, will, I don't know, force the aviation to take on board more synthetic fuels with low carbon, and this will cost significantly more, and this will increase the cost of air traffic, and that gives room for high-speed train at night for long distance in Europe.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this stage? Yeah. Yeah, please.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment regarding shift to rail, and so I want to share my experience in shift to rail. I work for an engineering company in Spain, and we've grown a lot thanks to the collaboration with this shift to rail. And I want to mention that we were an SME when we were in shift to rail. Now we are a large company, but small among the large. So I just wanted to thank the Commission for this joint undertaking, and I would like to know if there are some rules already for the shift to rail too.
Well, the answer to your second question is I'm sure there are people around this conference who are drafting things, but no, it's early days, so clearly we need your feedback in the consultation process on what kind of rules and structures we need for next time round. Miroslav, briefly, and then I've got a closing question for the panel.
I have a very easy question to all of you. There were 3 revolutions in the modern railway. First was the steam, second was the electric trains, the third was the high speed, and what will be the rail 4.0?
Thank you, Miroslav. Any other questions or comments? Right, well, I think that actually gives us a good closing question. I mean, I would like you to tell me in one sentence what you think the priorities should be for the future Horizon Europe for rail. But actually, I think Miroslav's question, what is Rail 4.0, what is the big breakthrough for the future, is even more important. So one sentence, priorities, and a couple of words, 4.0. We'll go round, we'll start with Chris.
I think simply it should be an integrated data framework with open data and collaborative analytics.
I think that Railway 4.0 will be autonomous, connected and zero-emission train.
I think we need to go back to the steam train and to rethink how rail is working. This is the innovation. If you look about the definition of disruptive innovation, we need to go back and think how the rail is operated and have the courage to move away. And if I go back to the question of the high speed, this was extremely interesting. I think we should have a clear objective of connecting all capital of Europe with high speed and create a network like the aviation network has. Nobody will challenge the fact that to go from Milano to Brussels, you can go through Munich or through Paris or something like this. Why we cannot do by train? Why cannot do by... But we need to have a network that is integrated, we have data, and is there where we connect the journey of people. Thank you.
Gilles, last word, almost last word.
Yeah, almost. Digitalized and automated freight train, fully connected with the other modes. That would be the fourth revolution, I think.
Great. Well, many thanks to everybody. Of course, the other answer to your question on night trains, to make that network, or to make the network that Carlo's talking about work, we've got to bring the cost of rail down over long distances. Because the problem at the moment, if you want to go a long way on rail, it's not that it's necessarily too long. It's just it's much more expensive than aviation. And if we want to compete, we've got to address that. So we need the research to address that. Conclusions, will we clearly have a choice between the known unknowns and the unknown unknowns? So 2 of my panel at least want to do automation and digital. I think we can all agree that must be part of the future. But Carlo says we've actually got to look for the thing that's out there that we haven't even thought of yet. So please go away and help us work out what that thing is. But while you're doing so, remember to respond to the consultation so that we actually get the right input and we frame the future research programme correctly. But thank you all for coming, and we look forward to your responses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.